Go ahead and put Kilroy's picture over the top, inside the actual iPad. So, what plans do you have for the 4th, Andrew?
Well, it's my anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
10 years this year. We're going to be at the Rough Rider Park celebrating our anniversary.
How fun is that?
Yeah, which is where we did.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Saturday morning. That means those two great guys full of information you don't want to miss. A veteran show for all veterans. Welcome Major Andrew White, retired, and Marine helicopter pilot Chuck Wright. Hey.
And welcome to our 4th of July edition of Kilroy's Conversation. That is right. It is America's birthday. And you know what? Damn proud to say happy birthday, America. If someone gets offended by that,
Turn off the channel.
Yeah, you ain't going to like this show.
Turn off the channel.
It's not a show. First thing, before we go too deep into stuff, as you guys notice, my co-host, my good buddy, Chuck Wright, is not here today. He is aiding and supporting his neighbor who is having some issues right now, and we are giving lots of thoughts, lots of prayers for all speedy recoveries all along. So, Chuck, way to go to stand up and to your neighbor. We're wishing all the best out there for them. But, as we say, the show must go on.
Well, and an American thing to do, right?
Exactly.
Stand up and go help take care of your neighbor.
Exactly. That's an American. That's a Texas thing to do, and we love both those things here in America. Filling in for Chuck is our good buddy, our friend, JP from JP Casting and Crew, the host over here. So we're going to have a lot of fun on the show today. Going to drop some knowledge warheads on foreheads today, as we like to say, and going to go over a couple things that are going on. First of all, big, news flash that just came across the wire. Probably, I saw it maybe about 2 hours ago. Sadly, it was, I can say my Secretary of Defense when I went overseas. He's the guy that wrote the orders or approved the orders for me to go overseas. Donald Rumsfeld, a.k.a. affectionately known as Rummy, and right. That was his name, has passed away earlier today. It's confirmed. In fact, just looking at it, just 10 days shy of his birthday.
Wow.
July 9th would have been his birthday. So,
wow.
Rumsfeld, what a career. This guy, he was a congressman. He was a Princeton graduate, no dummy, I know
right.
A lot of people, during those times, eras,
Poli-sci degree.
Yep. Smart, a member of Congress, served in the Navy. He was a true, when you look back, we can always argue whether or not decisions were right, wrong, indifferent. One of the things that struck me that I was very impressed with Rumsfeld, he was one of the first as Secretary of Defense. He did not have a chair in his office. His desk was a standing pulpit. And, when I saw that, I was like, you know what? He did that because he signed best on his feet. He wanted to.
Why, don't you?
No, I don't.
He was the youngest Secretary of Defense.
That I did not know.
He was also one of the oldest.
That's right. He was more than one.
That's right. So he was the youngest and the oldest appointed Secretary of Defense.
Yep.
See, that's why he had those young legs.
Exactly. Well, he did that under the Bush years, senior, and he was, a very smart man. I would say I heard him speak when I was over at Fort Leavenworth. He was over there doing one of his book promotions, and he spoke. And I'll tell you what, the man loved America.
Yeah.
There was no question about it. You can argue whether the decision to go into Iraq, right, wrong, indifferent, fine, fair. You can criticize the decision making and the policy that they made. That's open for fair, interpretation of whether that was right or wrong. But you cannot question his love and dedication, support to our nation. That, to me, is unquestionable. He was a true patriot, and he really did believe what he was doing was for the best interest of our nation and serving his commander-in-chief.
You know, and he was as engaged as George Bush was. And I'm
Yes.
talking dad, not George W., but George H. Bush, right?
Right.
And so what do I mean by that? Well, first and foremost, he was in Congress from 63 to 69.
Right.
Then he was appointed to the director of the Office of Economic Opportunity from 69 to 70. Then he was the counselor to the president from 1969 to 1973. Then he was the United States permanent representative to NATO from 1973 to 1974. Then the White House chief of staff, 74 to 75 for Ford. Then between his terms as Secretary of Defense, he also had time to serve as a CEO and chairman of all kinds of companies. But that's not even the best yet. The best was, of course, when he goes out and he co-sponsors, and I say the best because this is going to impact you guys, right?
Yep.
Federal employees, co-sponsors the Freedom of Information Act.
Yep.
And that's where that came from.
And
Where you could know what your government's doing. You could
Exactly.
actually call and ask, what is the Army doing? What is the IRS doing?
And that is right there, I think, a big testimony inside the man. You know, controversial, not controversial of what he did, I think, if you look at who he served, who he advised, and how he went about doing his job, the Freedom of Information Act is monster. I don't
It is.
think
It's huge.
people understand what that really means. That was really, when we talk about transparency
Right.
in government, that's it. And Donald Rumsfeld co-authored that. He put transparency in the forefront. So when you hear politicians talk, that's Donald Rumsfeld talking.
That's right.
That is his credit.
Can you imagine our government running as long as it did and citizens didn't have access to the information that the government had? I mean, until 1962 when Rumsfeld co-sponsors this bill.
And think about how many things have gone on that information out there. He did a lot, you know, that would be considered, you know, non-Rumsfeld-like. But if you realize he was a great leader in our nation's history. We lost a great man from all accounts.
And he brought a great man.
Yeah,
The young Dick Cheney, who was a staffer of his.
exactly.
When he goes off to NATO, he has Dick Cheney appointed.
Exactly. And did you ever see the movie Vice?
I have, yes.
I thought it was an excellent movie. It really showed the relationship of both him, Cheney, and all that. And again, take away some of the political controversy of it. You know, there's not a politician out there today, past, present, or future. At that level of government, you're always going to be open to some level of scrutiny, controversy of some kind, shape, or form. Honestly, when I look at both those men, I see people that really had the best interest in America. Did they make necessarily the right decisions always? Up to interpretation, depending on how you want to look at it.
Right.
But I don't think there's a question on whether or not their intent, their direction, their leadership, what they wanted to see and the overall outcome was for a better America. And I think that speaks volumes of who Donald Rumsfeld was.
Well, they can't be un-American when 3 different presidents in 3 different decades asked you to come and serve.
And not only that, but
I mean,
when you look at those presidents, they all were different personalities.
boy, weren't they?
You know, different. You know, they knew something about who Rumsfeld was.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's a litany of folks that have served in the presidential cabinets that personally did not get along or clearly did not see eye to eye with the president. But you know what? They knew they were the right person for the job.
Right.
You know, at that level of government, forget whether you like them or don't like them. Are they the best qualified to lead certain departments and agencies and advise you in the best way possible? And I would say each one of those presidents could say without question, yes, he did. He was a good advisor. He gave me the advice necessary at the time based off of the information at the time, of the situation at the time, of what it called for at the time. And that, I think, is very important to keep in mind is, you know, we as the public only see, I wouldn't even call it the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're the tip of the tip of the iceberg of what we see. The amount of information that these individuals get on a daily basis, minute-to-minute updates, we're not privy to.
Right.
We don't see that. They have to make these life or death decisions of what is in the best interest of America. And I would say people like Donald Rumsfeld did that. To the best of his ability with what information was being provided to him that we will never know.
Yeah, and you're right. He was born July the 9th, 1932. So his birthday just literally around the corner. He was about to turn 89. Worked under Nixon, just in case you were wondering. Worked under President Nixon in the 60s, worked for Ford in the 70s, and then came to work for George W. Bush in 2001. And when he retired in 2006, decided to sit down and write down some of those great American ideas. You know, talking about great American ideas and ideology, goodness gracious, how about George Washington and Bunker Hill?
Yes. What?
I mean, how crazy is that? I mean, you talk about a guy who's fighting the world. I mean, George Washington was fighting the world.
And I am proudly representing my man.
I bet you he wishes he could have had that back
Absolutely.
then.
You know, for those of you that can't see, I'm sporting one of my favorite, Washington, definitely one of my.
She can get you. Chambriel, zoom in if you can on him. Check this T-shirt out. Washington's got a gun with a scope. I mean, this thing looks like it's amazing.
Yep. Which, if he had a scope,
he could have probably prevented a lot.
Could have prevented a lot, but we had. Do you know one of the very famous battle cries that came out of Bunker Hill?
I don't.
When you hear it, you'll be like, "Is that where it's from?" The Colonials were defending they had the high ground at Bunker Hill,
right?
And the famous battle cry came out: "Do not shoot till you see the whites of their eyes." There's my shirt. There we go. Washington wearing his tack.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. See there? That's good stuff, man. Look at the body armor he's got.
Exactly.
You know Washington wishes he could have had that.
Yes, he did. And, that battle, while historically a military loss for America, was really a more of it because that was the first real battle that the British took a beating. They took that hill with a lot of blood and guts spilt, and it took a lot to win that. The commanders for the U.S. side, William Prescott, General William Prescott, he was the one that made the famous cry, "Do not shoot until you see the whites of their eyes."
And this also was in June. So it had
June
to be,
17th.
Gosh, it had to be hot.
The humidity, and I can tell you from a guy up there. Oh, yeah. Well, that's what the British had. Remember, not the Americans or the Colonials at the time.
Kind of tattered, I guess.
Yeah. We had a mixture of, we did not have a formal military uniform to speak of. We had some folks like Washington who were more formalized in their uniform, some senior officers. Most of your average soldiers were dressed in clothes and garb of the era. The hill, and I've been to Bunker Hill, which, many times growing up in that part of the country, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful area, but what a battlefield. Let's paint the picture. This hill overlooked the harbor. And one of the big strongholds also there was a small hill right next to it called Breed's Hill. Keep in mind, we had to hold that ground because, remember, the big battle areas were Lexington, Concord, Boston, Massachusetts area, and, of course, Virginia. That's where the fighting was, in the day. And the British coming over there, the troops, they were well-trained, they're military. And keep in mind, traditional.
Great picture here.
Yep. Great photo. And you're doing what we do all the time. We look at our back screen.
It's over here. Well, here's a nice thing. You ready for this, though? See, Chambriel's better than I am. And so we're not using the camera to capture this. She's running it in through the actual feed.
Nice.
So we can actually look at this and nobody knows.
I like it. I like it.
She's better than I am, I told you.
She's good. Yeah. She's good. For those who don't know, we've got our great assistant today working on the show. Got to give you a look at Chambriel.
Chambriel gets a little love there.
Yeah. She needs love. So those tuning in the show today, make sure you give just a little bit of, like the show for Chambriel. Give her a little love message on the show if you like it. Say, thanks, Chambriel, making these guys look good. That's right.
Amen.
You got that. Got to give her the love on that.
Here's what's interesting about Bunker Hill. First and foremost, let's set the stage a little bit bigger. American Revolutionary War, folks. So if you're just joining going, Bunker Hill? Was that in Afghanistan?
No.
That would have been the fight for the Americas.
Yep.
And where Britain was trying to control
This is what gave us our country. And that right there, and I'm glad, and I want to help tee it up a little bit more for what's going on. Keep in mind, all right, we were, at that point, 13 different nations, not really one nation under God, as we like to know today.
Right.
We were 13 different nations, but we had one cause: defeat the British and give us our independence to run how we wanted to. You know, famous battle cries: no taxation without representation.
Right. Boston Tea Party.
Boston Tea Party. I mean, we can go on and on and on about the different
The British
events.
are coming. The British are coming.
Exactly. Paul Revere, which wasn't Paul Revere. He didn't make it very far.
That's right.
You know the name of who?
I don't remember.
Israel
Smith?
Bissell.
Oh, Bissell. That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
He was
John
really
Paul
the
Smith,
guy.
I remember too, but no,
well,
Israel
there was
Bissell.
actually 5 riders.
Was John Paul Smith was one of the riders, right?
I believe it was.
I'll have to look it up.
I can't remember those 5 riders that left out. Paul Revere, just because he was politically involved with Sam Adams and John Adams, is
Right.
why he gets the quote-unquote credit. He only made it, I believe it was 14 miles. So he did not travel very far on that day. Israel Bissell was the one that was the most successful, but who talks about Israel Bissell?
Nobody.
these days?
No,
You
it's
know,
all Paul Revere.
He was really, but Paul Revere. 2 were captured relatively early in the alerts. They just chose a bad route to go and got picked up by the British very, very quickly. But, you know, the British at that time, the most powerful military on earth, as we knew it today. I mean, they had the Navy, their uniform. They were so well preserved, you know, they were a fighting force. You did not want to mess with the Brits at that point. And again, back to the famous battle cry, the Redcoats are coming. But the British ego and tactics were really much their demise at the end of this war. The British were hoping to put down the colonials in a quick, fast, and swift manner. That's why they sent all their troops over at first. And they saw by overwhelming odds. And keep in mind, at this time, not a lot of we were almost 50-50 as some supported the crown. Some were like Washington and Paul Revere and Adams and Jefferson. Were like, no, we're done with this game. We want our own country. Now, did they have any hatred towards the Brits? No, they had a hatred towards the crown. There is a very big difference. You know, keep in mind, a lot of colonials still had businesses and families over in jolly old England at the time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, direct ties. Well, I mean, even Ben Franklin
Yep.
had a ton of ties across the
Yes, he did,
pond
across
over
the
there.
pond.
Yeah.
You know, so we're known as Happy Treason Day in
Right. All right. So, you know, here's something interesting also about Bunker Hill. Of course, it was strategic. You know,
Yes.
they had gotten word that the British were going to abandon Boston and get up into Bunker Hill and the surrounding area to surround the port.
Yep.
And control the port.
Port of Boston.
That's right, from around. And actually, and more specifically, the Charlestown Peninsula is where the lines were kind of crossed, and there was a smaller fortified group there coming across. So the British had gotten wind the colonials were coming. Colonials got wind 4 days earlier that they were going to do this, and so that's what forced them out into Bunker Hill, and then what would later be called Breed's Hill.
Yep.
At the same time. And what's truly interesting about the whole process is that the 1,200 controlled colonial troops under William Prescott were able to stealthily occupy Bunker Hill and Breed's Hill, construct a strong defense, a force ready to go. What kind of stopped it all was the fact that the British had gotten wind, and they went ahead and they fought then. Like, they didn't wait. They went
correct.
Yeah, they went right after it.
But here's another thing. This was also the second major engagement up in that area, because just a few months earlier, the Battle of Lexington and Concord happened. There was a few little skirmishes, but keep in mind, and of course, the Battle of Lexington and Concord was known as a shot heard around the world. That, to this day, no one still knows who fired that first shot. It's widely speculated that a untrained militant probably fired the shot. But once that shot fired, all hell broke loose. And here's where I'm going in with some tacticals of it. The Americans, while we took our guidance mainly from the British military, because that's where our senior officers learned how to fight, we also learned some tactics from the Native Americans that were in there and taught us a little bit about guerrilla-style warfare. And the British would fight formal military in ranks, up close, one down on a knee, one over shooting rifle, one in the back loading, and another one in the back reloading their weapons, and they'd be handing them off, going back and forth, and that's how they would fight war. One would take a volley, the next would take a volley. The problem with that is, one, the weapons are not very accurate. You and I could be literally this far apart from each other, and I could miss all the way over here. That's how inaccurate those rifles were.
Right.
But that's why he fired with such large volleys to hopefully hit something down the road. And that is how they fought. The Americans learned through a lot of the Native American tactics of stand behind stone walls, stand behind trees for protection. And that is what caused a lot of dismay for the British as we learned and applied those tactics. You'll see many, in the swamps and down in Georgia,
right.
in South Carolina. The swamp fox.
Right.
He was big in those tactics, and that caused havoc for the British. They were not prepared for that. But some of the casualty events, while keep this in mind, the British lost on that day 207 soldiers. That's huge.
Does that include the officers or not?
In the officers, 19 officers killed. Now, keep in mind, 19 officers killed is a lot in a military the way they were designed, because they did not have an NCO corps like we know today.
Right.
In today's military, we've got your commissioned officers, but your NCOs. That's actually, and we'll talk about this in a later show, what made Vietnam so incredibly difficult for us, besides the fact that we were fighting a very, very trained and very well-armed enemy. They all had a officer and NCO corps that NCOs knew how to lead men if the officers fell.
Right.
That made a difference, and that's also, we can talk about how the Russians also fell apart in, caused a little bit of, Stalingrad and all those battles. We can talk about that later.
So I want to see if you got this. I want to see if you know this knowledge bomb. What do you call it?
Dropping knowledge warheads on foreheads.
Knowledge warheads on foreheads. First of all, how many battles or assaults did it take for the British to drive the Americans back?
I believe it was 5 assaults.
Three.
All right.
3 assaults. So that's knowledge.
I knew it was multiple.
That counts, right? That
yes,
counts
it does.
as what's again? What are we called again?
Knowledge warheads on foreheads.
Knowledge warheads on foreheads. Here's the next one.
All right.
Do you know why the colonials had to back out of the third assault?
That I don't.
They ran out of ammunition. That's the only reason.
And it's the reason why we also were known to use do not shoot until you see the whites of their eyes.
That's right, because we ran out of ammunition. The British front lines couldn't handle the assault, the first 2 assaults that came from the Americans. And the British went into that thinking, oh, these guys don't know what they're doing. They're not trained. We're well trained. We are the frontal army attack of the world, right?
Yep.
They got destroyed and decimated in Battle 1, Battle 2. And the only reason why they retreated in Assault 3 was because they ran out of ammunition. And do you know that there were over 100 African Americans fighting side by side with those American colonists?
That I didn't know very, very well, because during the battle, the Boston Massacre, the very first casualty was an African American by the name of Crispin Adams.
That's right.
He was the first, and he was a patriot.
Absolutely.
That is something to really understand about America is, if you think about how our founding fathers and our country was formed, we were very much we don't see the color of your skin, but the character of who you are, because that's the type of country we were back then. Equality, you're out there fighting for it, our freedom. And if you think about places like Rhode Island, one of the reasons why we left, England was because of religious persecution. Rhode Island was the first state to establish uniform, whatever religion you want to practice, go for it.
Right.
You're here. Take it. It's yours.
Absolutely. Well, what's interesting, and I want to get talking about the what caused or what brought about the next step, but I wanted to drop this. So we only lost 2 officers
Yep.
in this battle.
Well, we lost two, but one of that we lost was a big one, and that was the mentor
Right.
to George Washington, and that was William Prescott. He was Washington's mentor. Washington said that was the man that he wanted to lead the American Revolution. And when he felt, that was his time to stand up and take the reins. That was his role model.
Yeah, and of course, then we also lost very integral part.
Yep.
General Joseph Warren and Major Andrew McClary
Yep.
was the final casualty of that battle. What's interesting is that we went from being a ragtag colonial army to the Continental.
Yep.
That battle
That's
created
where
the Continental
Washington
Army.
became the commander of the
That's right.
Continental Army.
And the British had to bring in Hessian auxiliaries. I don't know if you
Yep.
knew that or not.
Yep.
To be able to rebuff the American, because it was too much for them. The British couldn't handle it.
And the Hessians were German, special infantry.
Yes.
That came in there, and of course, those are the ones that Washington attacked on crossing the Delaware.
That's right. Yep.
So
So all of that culminates into what we celebrate now today.
exactly, the 4th of July, independence. Now, I want everyone to take a moment here to think about what the 4th of July is. Yes, it is fireworks, parades, which we will talk about a little bit later in the show, but it's also probably one of the biggest gambles anyone has ever taken. We were a nation, really, we haven't proved anything yet to anyone.
Right.
We were really just as they called it, the American experiment. We were there and we said, enough's enough. And these men, every one of those men that signed the Declaration of Independence, literally signed their own death certificate.
Absolutely.
They knew, not only did they sign their death certificate, but they signed the death certificate of their family, perhaps their neighbors. They knew each and every one of them would have been hung had they not been successful.
Yeah.
There was no question about it. It wasn't even, it's like, well, maybe they imprison. No, imprisonment wasn't going to be there. King Henry would have hung each and every one of them publicly.
Yeah.
And probably brutally too.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was not that type of thing. And if you think about the courage it took for these men, especially I look at people like John Hancock.
And had a lot to lose.
Yep. Had everything to lose.
I mean, they had land, they had titles.
They had everything. Money, family over in England. Every one of them was, established in some way, shape, or form. They risked everything for our nation. And that is something I think really, we need to really look at our founding fathers. I look at, while it's a great holiday to celebrate our birthday, I think it's also a holiday to reflect on, hey, who we are as a nation, why we are as a nation.
Right.
There's a lot of lessons to be learned. Are we perfect? No, we're not. And I've said this many times. America's not a perfect country, but we are definitely the best damn game in town. If you think, there's a better country out there, let me know. I'll be more than happy to make your travel reservations, help pack your bags, and send me a postcard. Let me know how that works out for you. All right? Because there's not. I've been around the world. I've seen what other nations do to their citizens. I've seen what happens when their citizens uprise against their nations. It's not a pretty picture.
And here's the thing. Benjamin Franklin, Winston Churchill once said that democracy is the worst form of all government.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine two guys like this? I mean, these are Democrat guys, Republic guys, right? Would say such a thing. They quickly followed it up with, until compared with all others.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's why we come together to form a better nation, a perfect nation.
Exactly.
We work for it every day.
We strive to be the best we can. Are we going to stumble? Are we going to make mistakes? Are we going to do things that you're going to scratch your head like, what the heck were we thinking? Sure. But that's the beauty of the way our founding fathers, their brilliance and genius. And I think using the word genius is very apropos when we're talking about who these men were. They made the Constitution so that it could be a living, breathing, working document. Something that we did not have, and why we sent the Declaration of Independence over to England, to let the king know we're done.
And I think people forget that. I think people forget, especially right now, with where we live and how we're living. And I think social media plays a huge role in that.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, and it's a small group of people compared to the rest of the country that think that we should eradicate the history of these men. And it's like, I don't think you understand what they put on the table.
You are so on the point. Yeah. And I use a great example. When I hear people wanting to erase history or not teach it or cancel it, whatever you want to call it, one of my most prolific and absolute best examples I can give you is, let's look over in Poland and Germany.
Right.
13 million. I'm not even going to talk about the 6 million Jews that were killed. The 13 million prisoners of the Nazi war machine executed. Now, you would think that a country like Germany would be so absolutely morally embarrassed by that part of their history.
Oh, and they're not.
Would want to erase that. It's the families of the victims of the Holocaust that say, never forget.
Yeah.
Never forget. If you think about those words in the context of how that applies to the Holocaust, I'm not saying we were a good nation. I'll be the first to stand up and say, yes, slavery and how we treated some of our American citizens, horrible.
Right.
Racial divide, horrible. Those were some dark, ugly, nasty, wish we could forget about those times in our country, but we shouldn't. We need to remember them and learn from them, just like our founding fathers. Some of them were not perfect men. We all know that.
No, but to form a more perfect union means you continually work.
Exactly.
You continually make it better. And that's what we've done as a country. And this
200
era,
plus years.
Yeah, whatever we're doing right now is not making us better. You want to eradicate James Madison? You want to eradicate Thomas Jefferson? John Adams? I mean, these men gave up everything. I'm talking everything.
Yep. You look at people like Washington. Now, yes, were they slave owners and was that a good, but that wasn't the definition of who they were. And there's a vast difference in how society was that right? No. I will go on the record and say 100% that part of it was wrong. But you want to what?
This country isn't who it is without it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's what got us here.
We've learned from, I know in my gut, without question, if Washington was here today and he understood and learned some of the things that we've learned over the 200 plus years, would he have still been a slave owner? I don't think so.
But I'm not even willing to speculate it.
Yep.
You want to know why? Because we're not here
exactly
without those men putting their families' lives, their neighbors' lives up on the chopping block for England, for us to become the United States of America.
Exactly.
And to give us the Constitution that we have and the Declaration of Independence that we have. And so it's, this, and again, it's a small group of people in America. It's not a large group we're talking about.
No, but it's a group that's gaining momentum. And while that too is in our Bill of Rights, to peacefully protest and all that. But the way I look at it is, what you're trying to protest is getting rid of the reason why you have the ability to protest.
Right.
Remember what we have here in America and the whole American experiment. It's worked. All right. We are the greatest nation. We're celebrating over 240 something years of this great nation's existence, of why we are who we are. And, you think about how the world has tried to replicate what we've done. No one has given you the amount of freedoms that we have in this great nation. There's not a country around that is as free as America is.
And I'm going to tell you what I love is the pictures you showed me earlier, how that is celebrated.
Yep. Oh, we're
right
go
there
to that.
in your place.
Yep. We're going to talk about that. My town, Bristol, Rhode Island,
Look at
where I
this.
went to college.
Look at this.
The center line streets are painted red, white, and blue. For those of y'all watching that, yes, red, white, and blue. We take pride in America in a small little town of Bristol, Rhode Island. They've got the largest and oldest continuous 4th of July, 236 years.
Wow.
And I will tell you,
Wow.
I have marched in that parade 5 years. It was 5 years while I was in college, and after college. No, I did not go to college for 5 years. Mom, dad, yes, pay.
I went to college for 12. I mean, hey.
And they call them doctors, But
Right.
the point is, if a small little town like Bristol, Rhode Island can honor America the way we do, and keep in mind, for today's standards in that part of the country, Bristol, Rhode Island is right dead smack in the middle of all the woke liberal thinking,
Yeah.
of America. And I know we try not to get too much of politics, but hey, nobody is getting rid of those red, white, and blue stripes in that town.
You don't think they'll get woke?
No.
Paint them red and yellow?
Not a chance.
Not a chance?
Not a chance. Not in that town. That is, and the cool thing about that town is this. I remembered, I think it was 1995. It was raining. And I'm talking about like rain.
Right.
And we're all thinking to ourselves, I remember being on the parade float and thinking to myself like, ooh, are they going to cancel the parade? And I'll tell you what, the parade kicks off around 10 in the morning. At 9:55, the clouds opened up and
You're
went
kidding
away.
me. Well, there you go.
And we started praying. Now I'm just like, you know what? I've never been one of those religious people, but man, to say divine intervention wanted the parade to happen in Bristol, the parade happened. And let me tell you, JP, if there's ever a road show we need to take,
This is the one?
this is the one to go. Because I will tell you right now, I love Bristol, Rhode Island, especially this time of year. It is a small, and you can kind of see these are, some of these, there's homes there that have been there since the Revolutionary War. And they're there, and they're still, and as you can see in the picture, and it is a fun place. There is some great times, and they love the military. In fact, I remember, when you see the ships of sailors coming off there and walking out, it is great to see smaller towns like America celebrate the 4th of July like it is. You cannot cancel America in Bristol, Rhode Island. In fact, I wish more towns in America would
do
learn
this, right.
from this. In fact, that should be what every one of our mayors, I think, should be striving for. In fact, we tried this one time in Dallas. In fact, I was part of it where we were able to do it on Veterans Day down in Dallas in front of City Hall in Dallas. We were able to stripe their red, white, and blue just temporarily. But you know what? How cool would it be for city ordinance to say, you know what? We're going to designate one small section of town to have the center lines painted red, white, and blue. Why aren't we doing that here in Texas?
I don't know. Why aren't we doing it?
I
agree.
I think, we know people in our communities.
We need to make a comment. We need to go to city
I think
council.
if you are a leader out there, you're in city council, I'm going to throw out a challenge. Because it's America's birthday. And we're going to stand up for America in this show.
all the time.
I'd say any city council member, any mayor, elected official, that you have the slightest bit of influence, go ahead. Put it out there. I want to see who's going to argue against you on that. Because, again, I'm not a politician. JP, you know a little bit about politics around here.
I do.
If you get enough votes, you can change it, right?
You can. Well, and again, the thing is that are you ready to go against a woke, small minority? Because that's who's going to come and talk about it.
Go for it.
That's what I say.
The way I look at it is this.
That's what I say.
I look at two flags that fly everywhere in the great state of Texas, the U.S. flag and the Texas flag. Last time I checked, now I may not have the best eyes in the world, but they're both red, white, and blue, are they not?
They are.
Well, if our flags are red, white, and blue,
Paint the road, baby.
paint it. I'm not saying the whole thing.
Well, I'm saying let's paint the whole thing.
Hey, I'm all for that too.
That would be cool.
But I would say small little towns in front of your city halls
Yeah.
in Texas, if if you're a politician, you're listening right now, I'm challenging you right here, right now. Put up that bill and say, we're going to paint, at least in front of City Hall, where the flags stand that represent your community. I think that's a fair and reasonable request.
I do too.
In front of your City Hall, they should be painted red, white, and blue. If you don't think that's right, give us a call.
Yeah, call us. We'll
Come on the show. We'll talk.
We'd love to hear you.
You know, I want to hear for our elected officials, every one of y'all, consider yourself on notice.
Come talk to us.
Come tell me why you don't want your City Hall. And I'm just asking just in front of City Hall. I'm not asking for the entire city. I'd love to see that. All I know is, how does a small little, mostly Democratic, liberal part of America City show more patriotism than Texas?
In Texas, yeah, I don't get it.
You know what?
Start talking to your people.
You know, I'm just saying, it's time to shut up and put up, right? You know, because so you can do better than them. They've one upped you, Texas.
Now, careful now.
Yeah.
Careful now. We're still living here.
Hey, but the thing is, JP, I'm not being careful because I love America and I love Texas. And I'm saying, you know what? I want us to do this.
Step it up.
I want us to say, hey, that's right. We got it. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We're going to take action. Let's see these leaders. And you know what? That's a great cause to take up.
Oh, gosh.
You know, think about how that would affect people. You know, and that's, I think, one of the things that we don't do enough in our country is, while Texans, and I'm saying this all complimentary, so I hope you take it this way, most Texans can laugh at every other state in the union because no one takes as much love and pride in their state as Texans do. I don't think there is a state that can even, they're not even competing for second place.
Right.
They're well off in the distance. Texas pride is second to none, and there's not even a close runner-up.
And I can't agree with you more. I'll tell you, happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day.
Exactly. Why don't we help boost that pride? Why do we not help say, you know what? We should show equal pride in both flags. And say, that's right. America first. If you don't like it, that's fine. We don't. If your feelings are hurt, I get it. I understand. Let me help you find some place where your feelings won't be so hurt. Let me see what I can do to help you out. You know what? I'm happy to. Let me know what I can do. I got some real good friends in real estate. We can get your house sold, and right now is a great time to sell your home.
Right now is
you
a great
make
time.
A great killing on the money. You let me know where you want to go.
I agree.
You know, I hear Afghanistan is beautiful this time of year. You know, go tell them how much you hate the American flag over there. They'll welcome you with open arms. You know, go for it. You know, Iraq, same thing. Lovely. Yep. You know,
love to see you go over.
Yeah, go
get
for
you
it.
A one-way ticket.
Exactly. You know,
one-way ticket.
I'll even help raise the money to get you over there. If you're a little short on the funds, if you're waiting for the house to clear, no problem.
We'll work with you.
Yeah. We're there. We'll know enough people.
We'll GoFundMe page.
Exactly.
We'll get you some money.
You know, and I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but I'm serious.
I know.
America takes, you know, and I've got some friends of mine, you know, while we don't agree necessarily on politics, you know, I've always said this, you know, people are like, oh, it's freedom of speech to burn the flag and all that. Wrong. I'm sorry. I have to grossly disagree with you on that. That flag is not a flag. It is a living symbol of America. All right. And there is a difference. You know, I fought for those freedoms. I've got friends that died for those freedoms. That flag is not just your freedom of speech to burn it, trash it, do whatever. It is a symbol of this nation. And there should be an asterisk on that says that flag stands for something. It's not just cloth. It means something. And you know what? While I know that may hurt a few feelings of people listening to the show, non-apologetic.
No.
None. You know, I'm sorry. You know,
I have nothing to apologize for.
You know, and that's part of the problem I think we're having in our country is we're too busy apologizing. Do you think Hancock, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Washington, did they apologize?
They certainly did not.
Not only did they not apologize, but they did it knowing that there was a noose getting tied around their necks.
Or a firing squad.
Yeah. No, they would not have been given the honor of a fire. I don't even think Washington, and when you think about the force and where it was, all that, as respected as Washington was, I don't even think he would have been given. Because if you remember, Nathan Hale, one of our great spies,
Right.
revered by the British. Revered. And Washington begged for his life, or at the very end, begged for him to get a firing squad rather than a hanging. And his famous words were, "I've got one life to give for my country." And he went to the gallows.
Yeah.
That says something about the leadership. And for people to want to know what made our nation great, people like Nathan Hale, a name that's left off so many history books.
And not talked about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. I think that is where the problem lies with our country, is that we are afraid to teach history. We're afraid that people may actually learn something from who these people were, what they did, and their mindset behind what they did. You know, Washington, Jefferson, all of them, imperfect men, but perfect for the situation and time of our nation. That is what I think is missed. I don't think anyone else could have done what they had done, that had the character and the moral and the courage. That right there, I think, is the biggest thing. To have the courage to do what they did and how they did it, risking what they had out there. You know, these are the lessons that are lost too much. You know, we're too quick to give celebrities and athletes free passes on so many things. I mean, you know, you look at some of our athletes that go out there and do some of the most outrageous, egregious acts, and they're right back doing what they did. They get, I don't even know if you can call them sentences. Right. You know, 9 out of 10 times, if they do serve, they hardly ever serve any real time of
a prison or whatever. I mean, and they get out and they go right back to work in the NFL.
And what are $50,000, $100,000 fines to someone who's making $50 million a year?
Yeah.
What's $100,000?
Yeah.
That's a sponsor is going to pick up that, that bill for them. So is that a tune that we're getting ready to wrap up
I
the
think
show?
It's time to wrap it up.
Well, it has been fun sharing the mic with you today, JP.
Well, thank you for having me.
Before we go that, I do have to give a shout out. Not only did I go to a school up in the Northeast and Pride and all that, if you could put up the one picture of my alma mater right there, Roger Williams University, Pride of the Hawks. We are the big sponsor. They let you come to
school there?
They let me, yes.
How nice of them.
Exactly.
Did your aunt work in the front office?
I was there, and
just kidding.
I helped produce the very first parade float that our university did. I was the first two-time president of student body at that school.
Really?
Yes, I was.
So in 1787, they allowed that stuff.
Yes,
Okay,
so we take a lot of pride out there.
I'm just busting your chops.
Hey, that's okay. I love it, but I have to give a big Hawk shout out to them out there. But want to wish America, all my friends, family, a very happy, very safe 4th of July. And of course, I have to do one massive shout out. I'm going to give my wife happy 10th anniversary. We did get married because we are a patriotic family. We got married on the 4th of July 10 years ago. So to my wife, happy anniversary. And we will see you all next time. Hoorah, hoorah, and happy birthday, America.
Happy birthday.
You earned it.